All right, welcome back. I had not mentioned it's a Father's Day, so I want to say happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Dad, we'll hang out later. So this is the quote I just said. That there's a quote that I read, and this is from the Ryan Lizza piece that was in New York, a really interesting piece. Ryan is a great reporter, I think, and always delivers very in-depth looks at what's going on behind the scenes. This is David Plouffe talking to Ryan Lizza in the New Yorker about exactly what we've been discussing, which is there's the presidential election, but of course there's Congress and the consequences of divided government and the consequences of a Republican Party that is implacably committed to destroying the president and to blocking any possible chance at any improvement or compromise, etc. David Plouffe says, if both chambers are more evenly divided, it could be a recipe for actually getting some things done. Because of the closeness, neither party is going to be able to do anything on its own, so either zero gets done for 2 years or there is a kind of center. Yeah. What have you been watching for the last 2 years? I mean, Congressman, you work in Congress. Does that strike you as completely out of touch with the reality of what it seems to me they still have not grasped the nature of the opposition? Yeah.
Well, I think you're right, because the Republicans do not want, they want to, A, what McConnell said, we want to defeat this president, but B, they've got a different ideology. They want to destroy all the regulations that control the financial markets, the regulations that give you clean water and clean air, chance to breathe. I mean, they want totally free market, and they don't care about it, and they want to get rid of the inheritance tax. They want the rich to become richer,
But wait a second. It's not even that, because those are affirmative visions. Yeah. Because it's one thing to have an affirmative vision, right? And Mitt Romney's laid out what his budget is, whatever. But that's right now what we are seeing is just a party line opposition to anything getting done that could possibly improve the economy in the short term. So just from the perspective of economic management, for the perspective of cutting some grand bargain on the budget for years to go out.
But that quote shows that as much as the Republicans are in this intimate relationship with paralysis, the Democrats are in an intimate relationship with delusion.
They're not understanding it.
Yeah. And David Plouffe is deeply involved in the management of this second term and the campaign. And to be so off base and so far away from the reality of what has happened.
It's away from the reality of Congress, but it's not away from the reality of trying to get that small independent vote that wants to think that we need to work with both sides.
The question is, does he believe this?
No,
right?
I'm talking to campaign people all the time, and all they say is privately, the Republicans are obstructionists. We can't work with them. They're trying to defeat everything the president is trying to do. So I think with a quote like that in a major piece of magazine journalism, there's a bit of the wishful thinking. This is a campaign improved hope. But
let's remember one of the first press conferences that the president gave after Republicans took the House. And Mark Ambinder, who is then with The Atlantic, got up and said, there's this debt ceiling that you're going to hit later this year. And how's that going to work? Are you going to be able to get the Republican votes for that? And the president looked him in the face and said, I think they're going to have responsibility now that having actual power is going to change them, and they will not recklessly drive the car off the cliff. Fast forward next month, and the entire nation in the car as it speeds towards the cliff. I mean, and I think that that debt ceiling moment, I thought, would open everybody's eyes about what the nature of this dynamic is. And I'll say this, there's not a member of the Republican Party per se sitting at the table. They are pursuing a vision that I think is to the detriment of the country. But, I don't know how I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and think they actually think it's better in the long run because they think Barack Obama is so bad. But they are pursuing it with total discipline and zealousness.
But I think we shouldn't underestimate the Republicans' commitment to the politics of winning. Like, the reality of what it means to win is not just about the destruction of the Obama administration, it's the destruction of President Obama himself. I think part of this is absolutely personal, and so that it is not that they don't accept that the strategy that they're pursuing may not be to the detriment of the country, but the reality is they're offsetting that with the reality is if this means we're going to win, there's no way that we will not stray off that course. There's no way we won't abandon that discipline.
But you have to sit back and ask yourself, a reasonable person has to ask, how do you possibly...
This is not about being reasonable, this is about winning.
True, and it's also about a party where now, if you're called a moderate, that's a bad thing. But how do you win if you disenfranchise African Americans, you attack women, you attack Hispanics, you basically attack most of the country as we know it today, and you say to yourself, this is a winning strategy.
I mean,
it makes no sense.
Agreed, and yet we see what the tracking polls are. I mean, the fact of the matter is the defining feature of the electorate continues to be polarization. It continues to be the fact that there's not a lot of space left over to battle for, the mythical swing voter, the unicorn that we all hunt.
But that also, that also shows very specifically that the Republicans understand what we're not willing to confront, and that is the fact that the polls are so tight when everything you've just said is 101% true means there's something else that the Republicans are willing to explore that we are not facing. Because the reality is when you wage a war against women, the way the Republicans have. When you are literally creating this assault against the Voting Rights Act, which is disenfranchising African Americans from voting, when you are against the DREAM Act, which is the Latino swing vote, you're against all of those things. Those polls at the beginning that you showed were at a dead heat. How is that possible with those truths?
Well, let me say one thing, and then you've queued up very nicely something we're going to talk about next, which is it's not. Let's just be clear here. Disenfranchising African American voters is an entirely rational, if morally odious, way of strategy for the Republicans to pursue. I mean, we know one of the bedrock facts about American politics is that, particularly in the era of Obama, African Americans are going to vote 9-1, more or less, for the president and not against Republicans, right? And against Republicans. And so, if you can take voters like that off the table in a swing state like Florida, if you can get 1,000, 2,000, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 of those voters not to show up who are voting 9-1 against you, it's reprehensible from the perspective of everything that we believe about equality and democracy and self-governance. But just morally neutrally as a strategy, it's not a dumb strategy, right? I mean, let's be clear.
But the Democrats then need an equally strong strategy to reach out to all of these groups to say, in their vision for the future of America, you don't count. You mean zero.
Right, but I think a lot of that, I guess my point is that pie feels like it's already been sliced. You know what I mean? Like who people had sort of figured out which team they're on, and that's why this election is going to be 2000 all over again. We're going to be up at 5 a.m, and there's going to be like 9 votes in some county.
Absolutely.
And one of the only place that I think there is some wiggle room is one of the big places there is wiggle room is among Latinos and Hispanic voters.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to the game-changing moment for President Obama on immigration from this week, right after this.